Having the opportunity to stay with NASA was more than just a safety blanket. It was a huge aha because it gave me the chance to heal some of the things that I realized I'm not really angry. I'm just uncomfortable.
Welcome back to the Worthy to Lead podcast. I'm your host, Christiana Corona. Thanks for joining us today. Today's conversation is about navigating change, especially the kind that asks you to reinvent who you are. My guest is Laurie Hall, and she has lived that journey in a powerful way. Laurie is a certified facilitator, a certified coach, and a seasoned speaker, and she calls herself a proud recovering engineer. She spent years working in highly technical environments with NASA and Lockheed Martin, supporting initiatives in outer space. And after a life-changing event that we'll talk about a little bit more later, she went on to found New Horizons Strategies in 2011, building a company dedicated to helping leaders navigate change with clarity and confidence. Today, she leads a global team of expert coaches and facilitators, supporting clients across healthcare, government, higher education, banking, and technical services. She partners with everyone from national agencies to Fortune 500 organizations. And here's what really stands out about Laurie's work. She doesn't just help leaders get better skills, she helps them to move through complex transitions in a way that creates sustainable, human-centered transformation, which is my love language. Her journey from NASA engineer to business owner and CEO is a story of reinvention, resilience, and courage. A proof that technical expertise, when paired with people-focused leadership, can create powerful transformation. So today we're diving into her personal story and what it takes to be authentic and live fully as you navigate change. I can't wait for you to meet my friend Laurie. Let's dive in. So Laurie Hall, welcome to the Worthy to Lead podcast. We're so glad to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you very much.
So I'm sure that probably half of your conversations in life start with this question, but I feel like I need to ask too. So you started your career in chemical engineering and aerospace. You got to work for Lockheed Martin. You got to work for NASA. You got to work with a team on the International Space Station. This is literally the stuff of dreams. This is what kids talk about when they're little. So I'm very curious to know, how was it actually having a career in this space?
Oh, in this space. I love it. Christiana, you're so fun. Thank you very much. Well, it was my dream to somehow be affiliated with NASA when I first graduated with my bioprocess engineering degree. Nobody knew what that was when I graduated, except for NASA. That was the one place that was actually looking for somebody with my degree qualifications, and that was the one place I really wanted to work. And when I first started, I'm from Kansas originally. When I first started, I had a woman take me in under her wing. She called me her Kansas kid, and I called her my Texas mom. And she said, "Laurie, you're going to love it here, but the NASA red tape and politics will drive you crazy." And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I'll keep my eyes peeled. I'm at NASA. I can't believe I made it. And it was amazing. Everything was so amazing. It's everything that you hope it's going to be. And then I think like most of us in our careers, maybe around like the, 5, 10, 15-year mark, we hit that kind of plateau where we go, is this it? Is this the way that it's going to be? And I still loved what I was doing, but I felt what my Texas mom was talking about. I felt that red tape and bureaucracy. So as much as I loved it, I like to tell people I'm the recovering NASA engineer now. Meant to be funny, because I have a whole lot more breadth and color, as opposed to just trying to make sure that I get the right answer. But I thank NASA for everything, including the level of discomfort to go do something else and realize that area where I felt like we've all been there probably too, where I felt like my heart, my values, my light, the direction that was actually shining in, as opposed to what I just, thought I was supposed to be doing. What do you think? Does that resonate? Does that resonate for you?
There are so many conversations that I'm having on a daily basis about this very topic. And how you can come back to that knowing of who it is you are and what you're meant to be doing, because we all are sort of chasing this idea of success that we've seen around us, right? And what people tell us it will be, maybe what our parents have modeled for us, maybe what we've dreamed about since we were kids. Like, this must be it. And then at some point, you're hitting these friction points where you're like, is that truly what I want? Is that truly what I'm supposed to be doing? Before we jump into kind of your pivot from there, I am curious though, what are some of the interesting space initiatives that people would recognize that you've worked on?
Fun. This is where I'm careful, because sometimes I'll get started and then I realize somewhere along the way people's eyes glazed over. Like, that was enough. Yeah. So it is cool. It is cool. When I first started, I worked on a bioregenerative life support systems project. Essentially, how do we put the Earth in a little box so we can take it somewhere else? And that was called the Bioplex back in 1999. Started working on how do we, that is what will sustain long-term missions. When it's not a physical chemical life support system, or some of the other systems too, but life support for sure. If we're going to take the squishy things into space on long voyages, it complicates the mission by like at least tenfold, because now we have to bring all this extra stuff. If you draw a box around a human being, like, what's the stuff that goes into that box and what's the stuff that comes out of that box? And what are the things that need to be held consistent, like temperature and pressure, around that box? And anyway, that was just fascinating to figure out what it might be like to put the Earth in a little box so we could take it somewhere else. Kind of the idea of Biosphere 2 in Tucson, Arizona. They said Biosphere 2 because we're on Biosphere 1 right now. So that was one of my favorite things. But that's also when I had the kind of aha moment of, yeah, not all of those amazing pie in the sky things ultimately end up coming to fruition. We called it birth to flight, the process of birth to flight. Sometimes it's birth and then the funding runs out. Or it'll come back up at another time. But the last project that I had an opportunity to work on in space was where I met my husband. Love him so much. And that was actually the mission that just happened. The Artemis 2 mission had the Orion vehicle, which is what the crew was in. When I was working on it for a couple of years, 18 years ago, I was in charge of the pressure control system, the potable water system, and then the wastewater system, the potty at the time. And that's when we were in a lot of requirements development. But that's where my husband and I met, working on the pressure control system.
I can't even imagine things with timelines like that long, right? Like that much preparation, that much testing. For you as an individual contributor or someone who's physically working on these projects, like, how was it that you stayed motivated when you didn't get to see the outcome of some of these things for decades?
Yeah. Well, I did it, honestly. I think maybe I'm not a pyramid builder. That all happened, that phase of that huge program happened at a time where I was going through a pretty significant transition in my own life. I unfortunately lost my sibling to suicide right at the time that I was like, is this it? Kind of when I feel like the meatball, the NASA logo, sometimes we call it the meatball, like sort of fell off the pedestal for me of like, it's got to be more, and so that transition that was happening in my life at the same time, my soul needed to see the difference that I was making in other people's lives more directly. And that's what makes, you said a lot of your clients are asking some of these same questions. And same, I feel like this is a conversation that comes up, whether it's coaches talking to each other or coaches supporting clients or leaders just supporting their staff, their employees, is when we get surprised because we have a values mismatch all of a sudden. The living, breathing values inside my heart are different than the living, breathing values of maybe the team or the organization that I'm supporting. And so it doesn't mean that my organization is wrong or that I'm wrong or that, there's something wrong. Because honestly, I tried to figure it out. What's wrong with me? Why don't I still like it here? But I can see now that it's just sometimes values can do this. And then we get so far apart that we may still have a very strong skills and interests overlap, but without that common values connection to kind of close the loop, we will be able to survive in that environment, but we won't thrive. And I love Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where essentially the top, that tiny little triangle at the top, this self-actualization, like, transcendent life purpose. That's what we all want. We want to be swimming in that. We want to be essentially doing the thing that gives back, that makes the biggest difference to us in the world, which often makes the biggest difference ultimately in the world. But one other comment on that, it's not always just the values externally with our own values. I mean, let's be honest, how many of us have even taken a values assessment recently? So that we have like a little bit of a compass. That's what's great about working with coaches. But it's
We
not
know so
always
much.
external.
So self-aware.
Yes, exactly. I bet you do a values assessment all the time. It's the internal ones, though. I'm grateful NASA gave me an opportunity to work part-time while I opened my own business. But we have some internal values that will fight with each other, like loyalty or maybe even purpose. Like, gosh, I thought this is what I was supposed to do with the rest of my life. With the one that was just screaming at me when I was going through it was authenticity. Like, who am I really? And am I letting that light shine? Like you can feel it when you can really step into your values.
You mentioned several things that I want to dig into, but one of the first things you mentioned was the red tape aspect of this role. And I know you kind of, you were like an individual contributor for a while being an engineer, but then you started moving up in leadership and starting to kind of work through that path, right? And you took over, I'm going to just paraphrase, so please correct me. You started doing more project management or program management and operations work. You got into Six Sigma, became a black belt in Six Sigma. all of those things that people in the industry are, looking up to. But that must have been like a pretty big shift in and of itself to go from being an individual contributor to then becoming a leader. And I know a lot of people that I talk to are hesitant to make those kinds of changes. Right? Like there's some trepidation there. You're kind of questioning, like, am I worthy to be a leader? How do I know what I'm doing? So can you talk a little bit just about that moment as well, that transition from being an individual contributor to essentially becoming a leader and how that felt for you?
Awesome. Thank you. And right back at you. I love the name of the podcast, Worthy to Lead. Because I think deep down, we might not say it out loud like that, but I think a lot of us feel like, am I worthy to do this? I think some people feel like it's just the next step in the ladder, like, oh, I'm supposed to do this. And then they just essentially translate, like, here's what I did as an individual contributor that was fantastic. And I'll just continue to do that as a leader. And we've all had leaders like that, and they're doing the best they can. And it's not what the people actually needed, Be it, who was it? His name will come to me later in the podcast, I'm sure. Be efficient with things, be effective with people. Two totally different skill sets. But to answer your question, when I was even in college, I realized that I loved to be the person pulling people together. I don't know why. In fact, I used to beat myself up about that. Like, Laurie, dang nabbit, focus on your studies, Try to get A's in all your courses. I didn't get A's in all my courses because I was doing all the social stuff. I was the membership chair or the social chair, or I was an RA in the dorms in college. You know what I mean? And I was like, you gotta focus. But I wish somebody would have told me, like, that's actually, in many cases, unless you want to stay just a subject matter expert, that's the larger part of our development, is the people side of things. So right away, when I got into kind of like system engineering, project engineering, system level management, I felt like it was always about being influential with the people that I was working with, whether I had actual authority with them or not. But I do remember when I was having a conversation with one of the gentlemen that I worked with when we were on the International Space Station work, and we were talking about some different things. And a wonderful contractor, he came in and he sat down in my office and he said, Laurie, I just feel like I know what the answer is. I know what we need to do. And he's like, gosh darn it, I wish we would just do that. And I go, I won't use his name, but I said, that's not our job though. Our job isn't to have the answer. Our job is to bring like the 15 different parties together to figure out what the answer is between us all. What's the answer that we have going forward? So I feel like that's when I kind of like, oh, I think I'm getting this leadership thing. I've sort of arrived, but For me, maybe it was a little bit more natural. I think I also have, on the disc, all these different personality assessments or MBTI. I'm the extroversion preference. I don't know if you can tell. I'm the I, with D, like right there, like, let's get something done though. So
You have
some
a
of
lot of self-monitoring. It sounds like I'm hearing parts of yourself like, go crazy. And then this one's like, no, buckle down.
That's right. Yeah. You're hearing what used to be kind of like self-logging. That's a much more healthy approach now, a much more healthy balance.
Yeah. But what I love about what you just said, that example with the person who was coming in saying, hey, I think I have all the answers, was I feel like your response to that is in a nutshell what you do now. Like it's what you do with everyone, right? Is appreciate and understand the role of a leader and how it isn't to have all the answers, but how it is to be a facilitator of the right conversations and to make the right kind of space so that you arrive at the outcome that you need, and guiding that process and how you do it and what tools you have and the right questions to ask and the way you coach, right? Like, what a nice, poignant example of how you have taken that inner knowing or that inner value that you always had and then cultivated it and developed it over time. I think that's amazing.
Thank you. And clearly you work with leaders because you know too. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really fun to see when the light switch turns on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they stop beating their head against the wall, like, why is this not working? Why am I not effective? And I think for me, it was interesting because I started with the opposite approach, which was I was a really great individual contributor, had very high standards for myself, got pulled into a leadership role, had no idea how to direct other people or hold them to high standards. It was so foreign.
Yeah.
And I had to learn the hard way, and then eventually found coaching and was like, oh, I get it. But, like not everyone has that ease of the journey along the way, and they hit these obstacles and then they question and they think, well, maybe I'm not meant for this. I just must not be the kind of person who can lead. So when you run into those people, what do you say to them?
Awesome. I love it. Well, I would, and I think this is the baiting, but to tweak it a little bit, the obstacles are actually on purpose. There are three words that I'm huge red flags word as a coach: should, ought to, supposed to, because that's normally somebody else's voice that maybe was planted 25 years ago, and maybe even with great intentions, right? But we've gotten really good at that being our own internal voice now. Of here's what I should do, here's what I'm supposed to do, here's what I ought to do, and to try to meet somebody else's expectations. But the experiences that we have, especially the ones that sometimes bring us to our knees, are not wrong. They're necessary. That was necessary for me to make the decision, almost like this indicator of like, I don't want any more of this. It didn't work out, and I actually don't like it. Or it didn't work out, but oh my gosh, I love it, and it keeps me up at night because I keep trying to figure out like what would have made that better. And what's really happening is like deep down you care so much that you're still thinking about it in your off time. So you care deeply. So all these things that happen along the way, when I have folks that are questioning like, oh, maybe I should have, maybe I was supposed to, maybe I ought to have. I think that's a big thing that comes up, is to appreciate that was something that was necessary that happened. Even if it's a very ugly baby, that shows up. It was just necessary on our paths. So that's how I help people a lot of times in coaching, to just sort of reframe and understand that, oh gosh, there's a learning there, and we're all human. None of us have done this before. We all try to make it look like we have, but there's no map. Especially once I went from employee, if you will, to entrepreneur, that there's no map. It's the biggest faith journey I've ever been on in my life. There's a lot of people that will try to sell you a map, and then somewhere along the way, again, all good intentions, but we pop off the map because we were like, no, that's not right. That doesn't feel right. That's not my business. That's not how I do things. And so even as an employee, it feels like there's certainty. It feels like there's a map. It feels like there's the supposed to, should, or ought to, but there isn't. There's just what feels right with the information that we have at the time. Of course, we want to do the thing that makes sense too, but hopefully there's a balance between these two. That's when we get to show up authentically.
So when you talk about that knowing, that moment of knowing you needed something different, well, first of all, how did you make that decision? Because this was a really big career pivot away from aerospace, essentially. Well, I know you still work with different clients, but from the one being the doer, doing this work, to coaching, which is radically different type of lifestyle, entrepreneurship, which is very different. That's a lot of discomfort. So first of all, how did you make that decision? And second of all, how did you handle the discomfort of that total shift in identity?
I love it. I love it. I'd love to tell you that, like, oh, I just figured it out, and then it's like, oh, put everything in place and everything was perfect. It took me 5 years. NASA, I don't know that they would do this for anybody else. I think everything in life worked out like it's supposed to, and we often have a lot of grace, that we just can be thankful for and hope for more of. But NASA gave me an opportunity to work part-time for the first 5 years when I started my business. So that what felt like a hard right, a hard 90 from like technical, professional, even though I was always the people, organizer, to entrepreneur slash coach and facilitator. It took me at least 2 years to swallow what that branding actually meant to me. So I think sometimes when people make big shifts like that, we just assume, we'll hang that shingle and then everybody will understand what we do. Not only does everyone else not understand what we do because they've seen us in a certain way for so long, we don't understand what we do. And so it's really hard for us to share that. So I am so grateful for that safety blanket to still work part-time while I was starting my own business and not have that hungry tiger look. It also helped me process through. I love Elizabeth Kübler-Ross. I'm a tool model junkie, but Elizabeth Kübler-Ross's 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. She was very clear while she was still alive that you don't have to have all these stages. You can maybe do them in a different order. You can spend more time in one versus the other. But she just noticed that tended to be the stages that most people went through. And I was angry for a long time because I didn't understand everything that I understand now. It's so easy to talk about what it was back then, but when I was in it, it just felt cloudy and foggy and frustrating and overwhelming and depressing. And so actually having the opportunity to stay with NASA was more than just a safety blanket. It was a huge aha because it gave me the chance to heal some of the things that I realized I'm not really angry. I'm just uncomfortable. And then for me, that depression step was, I actually do need to leave. I want to do something that actually makes my soul sing. I want to do something that makes me feel like I have purpose. That Blue Zones show on Netflix. I don't know how many I love it too. They're like, well, why do all these places? She said, I just marked it on the map with a blue highlighter. That's why we call them the Blue Zones, But why are all these people living to more than 100 years old? This is statistically unique. Let me say that. And most of it's because they had community and they had purpose. So I feel like it was a 5-year street fight, maybe a little bit of like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just trying to do the best that I can, trying to have faith with it, do a lot of healing, go out and try to sell stuff, to make a total fool of myself, learn a whole lot, try it again the next day. And then eventually you get it. You start to figure it out.
I appreciate the vulnerability of that share because a lot of people don't want to talk about that messy middle part. They just want to make it look like I always knew what I was doing, and here's my 10-step process to fame and success. But it's never that way, is it? I was looking at your LinkedIn page because I noticed that you had this really fun quote, and I wanted to grab it for this conversation because I think it illustrates what you're talking about right now super well, which is the Howard Thurman quote. Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and then go do it. Because what the world needs as people who have come alive. That gave me goosebumps when I read it.
Yeah. That was like a mantra to me in my own journey. And sometimes people say, and maybe you've had this experience too, when people go, well, what was the hardest part? And when I was first thinking about doing all this, you do what feels right. So I just started reaching out to a whole bunch of people that were already doing it. Like, hey, would you make time to talk with me? Thank you so much. And what's the hardest part of this? And I thought they would say like, oh, I don't know, trying to design my marketing system, or following up with somebody that didn't pay their invoice, or I got maybe lawsuits, like what if we got sued for something? Oh my goodness. And now we're enmeshed in this messy stuff. And nobody said that. The most common answer was making the decision to do it in the first place, And so when I talk to people now, and I wonder if this is your experience as well, I have never felt more alive in my life than when I decided to take ownership of my entire career and job. And, and that point lands right on me. Sometimes it's super scary and overwhelming, but you know what? We figure it out. We make it work. And I'm grateful that we're in an environment where we do have opportunities in the United States, where if I needed to, I could probably go get a job. And I could do the skills interest overlap and maybe not have the values connection for a little while because I need to survive, but I really want to try to thrive.
It's interesting that as you talk about that process, because I felt like I left the corporate environment kicking and screaming. Like I did not think that this was where I was going to land. To be honest, I really liked the rhythm of it. I really liked kind of the certainty of how things work, knowing the system, how the system works. There's a sense of mastery in understanding how the system works and then being able to work within that, right? And helping other people work within that and building amazing teams and getting to work on really incredible projects around the globe. Like there's just something really great when it's working until it's not. And then, for me, it was much more about I keep having these things in life that are turning up the volume and pulling me in a different direction. And every time I kind of face that with resistance and I think, oh no, I can figure it out, I'm just going to keep going forward. It's like it just kept tugging at me over and over again and, turning up the volume a little bit louder, a little bit louder, a little bit louder until it's like, okay, I'm clearly not getting the message here. Like I need to make a pretty radical change. And I don't necessarily feel ready for that. Like, yes, am I a saver? Yes, am I a safety net person? Absolutely. But it wasn't necessarily in my big design or in my plan for life. This is how it's going to go. Sometimes you just have to roll with the punches of what you're given and make the best decision you can, right? And that's kind of where I ended up. And so it's interesting kind of entering that from a standpoint of I probably could have stayed in the corporate world for 10, 20 more years easily and felt like that was a natural path for me. But now that I'm here, working on fully owning that and saying, well, if this is the life that I'm supposed to lead, I'm going to do the best job I can. I'm going to meet all of these people. I'm going to take advantage of the flexibility and the fact that now I can lean into that. Like in the Blue Zones, they talk about the ikigai, right? The purpose in Japan. And we do those exercises with people because a lot of times you aren't aware of what is it that you love, that the world needs, that you also get paid for, all of those dimensions of what it looks like. And so I'm still figuring that out too as we're going through that, but we can go through that together. And so it's allowing me to live that experience with other people now fully without the distraction, without the noise, without the constant tug of, am I meant to be here or not? Like, I'm meant to be here right now, so what are we going to do with this time?
It's a new level of certainty in that sense. I totally agree with you. I think there's so many layers, right? We try to do the best that we can. We try to, especially like pretty much 0 to 20 and maybe even 20 to 30, like, oh, I should, and then I do, and then I accomplish, and then the next step. And that's critical because in our formative years, our formation of like who we are as a person, developing a strong work ethic, developing an understanding of ourselves, we're really not successful at anything we do if we don't have both of those. So grateful for all of that. And when we begin to realize that, the Army came out with that term VUCA, the VUCA environment. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's, what is it? Constant change and ambiguous. This VUCA, it was essentially a risk mitigation strategy that the US military was like, this is what's happening. And I think it was in the 80s they came out with that. But I think most people can resonate with that now. Like, oh my God, stop with the constant change. It's not going to stop. To be alive is to be in a constant state of change. Our cells are literally replenishing. We have a whole new body pretty regularly. How do we find our calm and our center and our certainty, if you will, amidst the chaos, amidst the constant change? And I think that's what coaches help with. Coaches help us to see that. In the all-knowing Facebook, I just read a quote a couple days ago, and it said, the butterfly can't see its own wings. Some biologists might be like, hey, yeah, it can't. I don't know. But the butterfly can't see its own wings. It can't appreciate the beauty of what it looks like, and certainly the backside of the wings. I'm sure the butterfly can't see those. Like, I'm thinking of that beautiful, brilliant blue one,
The Luna moth?
Yes. Oh, it can't see its own wings. Everyone else can see that.
Yeah.
And, I just feel like that becomes our journey after a while, is to appreciate the things that feel like second nature to me are probably the ones that I can define my whole purpose around. And in some cases, create a business and a lifestyle towards. Coaching isn't a job or a career. I feel like really good coaches, it's a lifestyle. I've changed my life to try to incorporate these things that we are potentially bringing up as topics that may or may not resonate with our clients. The steering wheel's always in our clients' hands, but I want to live what I'm speaking, not just speak it.
There's something really powerful about the fact that you get to focus on that energy every day. When a lot of people, they only get it for an hour or two every couple weeks in spending that time with you or a coach, you get to be in that lifestyle of being in that space all the time, which is really incredible. It's an incredible opportunity. And I think about all the people out there right now who are dealing with the grief of layoffs and AI potentially taking their jobs, or having to make a really significant shift and losing their identity because their identity was really tied up in a title or a role. And you had kind of talked a little bit about like the 5 stages of grief, like the tools you use to help people through these massive life changes, through the VUCA of life. And I know you also had mentioned to me another tool that you like to use, which I think you call the lifeline exercise, to help people really see the bigger picture. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
You are delightful. Thank you so much for bringing up the things that just make my light shine. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so early on, right, we all get these thoughts, we get these ideas, and in my journey, even when I was still at NASA, I remember thinking at one point, gosh, if I could create almost like a graph, I'm such a recovering engineer. I'm always in recovery. But if I could create something like a graph of time, certainly on the x-axis, and then the y-axis is sort of like, I don't know, just experience. Maybe I've had people say maybe that's level of fulfillment, but to almost be able to show, gosh, from birth, when everything is like maybe even black and white, and then some grays start to blend in, and then maybe we start to get some colors, and then we get textures, and then we start to get patterns, and then we start to get pictures and shapes and experiences, and then we get these North Star things like, oh, that's what success is. That's what I'm going to go for. Wouldn't that be amazing to graph out our lifeline in that way, and maybe even make an art project of it? So I started researching it. There's a book it's called Lifeline Therapy. And I was like, what is this? Which is also fascinating if you get a chance to read it. It was not at all what I was thinking it would be, but I still really enjoyed it. But what I think helps leaders, and then also helps their teams, But even if we take out like the organizational thing and we don't just say like leaders or teams or whatever, sometimes that's an easy way for us to be like, oh, I'll spend the time to work on that because it's for work. It's a little bit more courageous for us to say, I'll spend the time on that because I think that just sounds fun to do as a human being and I want to work on myself. So whatever gets you into it, take a sheet of paper and write out the significant emotional experiences you've had in your life. Maybe that's personal, maybe it's professional. I encourage people to mix it all together. Maybe it's a college graduation. Maybe it was a marriage. Maybe it was a child. Maybe it was a divorce. Maybe it was a death. Maybe it was a move. Maybe it was a career shift. Maybe it was a layoff. Maybe it was starting your own business. Maybe it was, getting the dogs. I don't know. There's all these things. And sometimes it may not even seem like it was that important, but when we think about it, it hits in our soul so powerfully. Write that stuff down. So now you have this list of all these major life experiences, and then try to put them with about when they happened in your life. And then one final thing, if you use a scale of 1 to 10, whatever works best for you, what level would you give that with respect to the experience? 1 being like, ouch. 10 being like, oh, wow, that was amazing. And then you can create that graph. You can create that lifeline, if you will. And we facilitated that in an organization that I had an opportunity to work with at one of the largest chemical company in the world. We facilitated the lifeline activity, and it gets real quiet. Of course, we don't ask people to share that with each other because that gets very personal. But everybody kind of hopes that their graph's going to look like this. Like it got better and better, better. Nobody's looks like that. It's this sawtooth. It's just this beautiful, painful thing called life that we experience. And the moments that we are taken to our knees, like when I lost my sister, those are the moments when we rebuild ourselves and we gain so much more than we ever did in like the little jumps along the way. It's necessary. Even if I would never wish it, it's necessary for us to get the growth and the learning and the awareness and the self-compassion and understanding that we needed along the way.
It's interesting that you are connecting the dots between the things that are the worst and the things that are the best, because I don't know that we naturally do that as humans. We think avoid the worst. It must be a mistake, or why did this happen to me? It shouldn't have happened to me. But what you're saying is there's a correlation there between the worst and the best, and the upswing after. That ability to recover, that ability to grow, and to pull yourself out of whatever that thing was is the meaning, is the learning, is the thing that you're supposed to be taking away.
It sounds, people are like, oh, so you're just telling me to be happy after something really bad happens. No, not at all. Go through it, but that's how we build those very, 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 very strong connective tissues, and sometimes slough off the things that used to be very important to us and just aren't anymore. Especially in coaching, whether it's proactive or reactive, sometimes when people get those aha moments, it's because we've gotten down that belief system level of, oh, I'm doing this because I feel like it's keeping me safe. But the truth is, it's actually getting in my way of being able to go out and be the person that I feel like I'm supposed to be, which is terrifying and liberating and all these things associated with it. So yeah, it's just this whole journey, and it's our battle wounds, it's our grooves, it's our aches and pains that make it better. I had a wonderful gentleman. He used to teach the seminar on leadership at NASA, and he said it in a way I'll always remember. He said it often takes a significant emotional experience, an SEE, for us to really see. And it does. And that's how we learn and grow. And Maya Angelou, we must forgive ourselves for not knowing what we needed to know before we needed to know it, because the lesson appeared when we needed it. I don't want to even say when we were ready, but when we needed it.
I feel like everyone who is going through one of those periodic moments, needs to be able to sit with someone like you, where you can hold that kind of thing and you can allow it to unfold the way it's supposed to without judgment, without telling, without directing, here is how you get through this appropriately, step 1 through 10, because everyone creates a different line. They jump to a different place next. It has a different meaning. And one of the things that I've really resonated most with in coaching is stop interpreting everything as good and bad that's happening to you, and just understand this is information that is telling you something important about what you value, or, what you care about, what you want to spend your time doing, who you want to spend your time with, the type of business you want to have or be a part of. Maybe that worst moment, that worst day was actually the best day because it opened your eyes to something that needed to change.
Yep. That's right. And our fear often, especially in organizations, of asking that question that we think we might already have the answer to, ask it. And then we're not making it up in our heads anymore. I've noticed so many coaching sessions a lot of times get to this point of, I hope this resonates. I am living in the reality as if the thing that I was the most afraid of has already happened, because I don't have the courage to actually go get the information. Maybe it's exactly as bad as we thought, or as good as we thought, whatever, take the judgment out of it. But without the information, a lot of times we just start to craft this like sheltered life. And another quote, I have no idea who said it, but I absolutely love it. Comfort has made more prisons than all the jails combined.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, comfort's great. And Brene Brown, you can choose courage or you can choose comfort, but you can't have both. And I like to add, well, right now, because right now we're choosing courage. We're doing something we haven't done before. Hopefully it resonates with a lot of amazing listeners for your podcasts. But tonight, about probably 9:30 or so, I'm going to choose comfort on purpose to recharge my batteries. But if I stay in comfort, especially out of that belief of, am I safe? Because I think that's where almost all humans go, is am I safe or not? And sometimes it's very appropriate. Sometimes we are physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually at that level 1 on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We all experienced it the year COVID came out. Gosh, am I going to die because somebody breathes on me or coughs on me? That took us all down from self-actualizing. But that's not where we're meant to stay. That we're meant to thrive. What do we have? Like a century on the planet? Maybe, if we're lucky. If we're in a blue zone. 100 years.
We moved to that blue zone, and we live in our ikigai, and we do art projects with lifelines. And maybe that we can hit 100.
Oh, I'd be your neighbor. I'd bring you baked goods. That'd be awesome.
Oh, I think that's a great life plan. Let's move forward with that one.
Yeah.
So now you work with organizations and you do a lot of these different kinds of activities. Like, how does things like the Lifeline activity and some of the things that we've talked about relate to the work that you now do? So you've been doing this like 15 years now, right?
Yeah, 15. This year's our 15th year in business. It's amazing how fast that went. So while I was still at NASA working part-time, I started New Horizon Strategies to help leaders get bigger breakthroughs faster, but to also help the professional world come alive, because I felt like too many people were choosing comfort and we were getting just this epidemic of sleepers out there. Hopefully that doesn't resonate with a lot of your listeners. Hopefully they're in environments where people are like fully alive and really enjoying everything that they do. But oftentimes organizations, especially that have been in a parent-child culture for too long, are like, man, you pretty much told me to not bring my mind to work today, so I'm doing what I was told. Those are awful, and those are kind of soul-sucking. But we want everyone that we work with to experience a shift where they feel like they get to shine their light just a little bit brighter, just a little, because one person, one leader, one team, one company at a time has this massive ripple effect. So we provide coaching, consulting, and facilitation to help leaders get bigger breakthroughs faster, and for individuals to help come alive more on the inside. So a lot of times I think about our services as almost like, it's like putting the structure together, the process, like a food buffet. Think of your favorite Chinese restaurant, or, any restaurant that's got a buffet. I can change out all the different food items in the buffet depending on what the clients bring, as they're driving. But the process to how kind of like organize the chaos of growth is what we do at New Horizon Strategies to help our clients feel just really nurtured along the way so that they can forget about the process and just show up and be completely themselves to get through whatever it is that they're trying to get through together.
So maybe just to wrap up this particular conversation, if you could leave leaders with one piece of advice, what would that be?
Thank you so much for this. I can already tell I would love to just talk to you. I'm really looking forward to being neighbors in the Blue Zones.
Oh, I can't wait.
I think leaders' greatest challenge in this century, now that we're a quarter in to this century, is to be as authentic as possible. And that normally feels very vulnerable. As Brene Brown says, also equally courageous, for us to be completely ourselves at work and not always pretend like we have all the answers. Just be authentic. Here's my style. Here's what I'm working on. Here's some of the things that I'm worried about. Here's what I really care about. It creates the invitation for everyone else to show up authentically too. It doesn't mean that people will accept that invitation. You may have to offer that invitation 8 times or 80 times. And some people may never walk through that door. Maybe they've just had so much trauma in their past in organizations that they're like, absolutely not. I'm going to show up and do whatever you tell me to do. So that maybe your employee may not be your employee, but to show up authentically, if we think about that, what does that really mean? It means I don't have to show up shielded. I don't have to show up guarded. I don't have to show up with like a face on. When COVID happened and we all started working from home and we started doing this virtual thing, I think that was a huge awakening for people to realize what really mattered to them and what didn't. And it kind of forced us to normalize the human condition. So everybody got to a point where they were like, I'm just trying to live. I'm just trying to make this work. I wish they wouldn't have called it the Great Resignation. I wish they would have called it the Great Resonation, because it was a chance for all of us to go, wow, what really matters to me? So that's that authenticity of, I can't always give everybody everything they want. The economy of scale means that I do have to put some bureaucracy in place, and I do still have to hold people accountable for things. But if I shut that part down and I don't tell people they can authentically bring their whole selves to work, then I'm only getting a portion of them. Not just because they didn't bring their whole selves to work, but because they're wasting so much energy trying to hide that part of themselves that they feel like they're not supposed to bring. And then the innovation and the collaboration and the communication and the relationships start to suffer because of it. So be authentic. Be yourself.
That is beautiful. I just want to take that soundbite and have it on replay every single day, because that's what people need to hear. That's what they need to hear. So Laurie, if people want to find you and learn more from you or follow along with your journey, where can they find you?
www.newhorizonstrategies.com. That's how you find me. That's how you find us. We have a team of champions that all bring coaching, consulting, and facilitation to your organization so that we can have a bigger impact. Christiana, this was so much fun. I feel like we could dance for a lot longer. Thank you so much for being my dance partner.
Well, thank you for making the time, and it's just been awesome to talk to you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Likewise.
I'm so glad you got to meet my friend Laurie. Isn't she great? I just love human beings who are authentic, who bring out the best in other people, and Laurie is definitely one of those people. You just feel better after being in conversation with her. So if you enjoyed this conversation and you want to hear more like it, consider subscribing to the Worthy to Lead podcast so you never miss a future episode. You can subscribe at worthytolead.co/subscribe. As always, keep showing up, keep doing the work that matters, and keep leading like you're worthy to lead. Because you are. We'll see you next time.